Tina, would you come up here, please? Oh, wonderful. Oh, yes. Oh, the whole thing. Can we spotlight it here, please? Oh, you look just wonderful. Do you sing?
Sure.
You do sing. You sing my song?
Only.
Well, later on, after I sort of get further on in the show, maybe we'll bring you up on the end. All right? All right? Wonderful. Now I know how I look.
So today we say farewell to Tina Turner, who was born in Brownsville, Tennessee, died today, May 24th, 2023. The first person I ever got to sit in the front row of her concert. I was front row and center, thanks to Target Corporation, who actually sponsored one of her tours. I will say this about Tina Turner. She loved people that looked like her, was a huge supporter of the GLBTQ community. And I just want to say that she will be missed. But today I actually want to dedicate my talk to another person. We had another passing this year, one of my favorite designers of all time who I featured in my book. So I want to dedicate this talk in memory of Dame Vivienne Westwood. Dame Vivienne Westwood was born in April 8th, 1941, and she passed away on December 29th, 2022. And I will say this is another person, just so you all know, I was very honored to meet Vivienne Westwood when I did a critique of fashion designs at Central St. Martin's. And a woman walked up behind me and asked me if this was the line that we should be standing in as the judges. And I said, yes. And we started talking. She said, what is your name? I said, my name is Joe. She said, my son's name is Joe. And then she revealed to me who she was. And I had no idea who she was. I really didn't know much about Vivienne Westwood at that time, but I was very honored to spend a few moments with her. So today I want to dedicate this talk to Vivienne Westwood.
My name is Olivia Kelly, and I'm a product developer in the retail and beauty industry. And I'm a recent graduate of the online MS Retail and Merchandising program at Drexel University. My background is actually in political science, but I always really wanted to work in fashion. I always wanted to be in retail. So I moved to New York and got my foot in the door at Macy's. I also worked at Gap Inc. and currently I work at 12 NYC, which is a creative and product development agency. I wanted to get my master's in retail and merchandising because not a lot of people have that, and I wanted to have a degree that sets me apart. I was really excited about the Drexel program just because A, it was online, it fit into my busy schedule, but also the program is really catered to you and what you want to learn. I have been able to get a very high-level understanding of the industry as a whole, but also how it pertains to my current position every day. I really love this program because I think it really spoke to my entrepreneurial spirit, if you will. A lot of projects really challenged me to think outside of the box. We had to come up with brand ideas. How would we develop this item, that item? How would you market this? Having like the tools and technology through our student portal to kind of play around with your own merchandising experience was great, or even just coming up with concepts to pitch. In one of my courses, we were supposed to come up with a business idea and through that develop a business plan. That's when I came up with a consultancy. I decided to build upon that for my thesis project. Now it's something that I'm trying to grow in real life. So that's been pretty cool, I would say, just because if I didn't do the program, I wouldn't have ever felt like I had the skills needed to make it happen.
So for all of you here this evening, I had to do a little advertisement because we are very thankful because of Michael J. Edwards and his contributions to having this Leadership in Retail and Merchandising series. Mike graduated in the class of 1983. He's a huge fan of retailing, and he was actually our founding spokesperson for the Masters in Retail and Merchandising program. For those of you in the program, please, please, please stay in touch with your colleagues over the years. I'm so happy to see one of our first cohorts who graduated from the program. Philip Thierman is here this evening. The team and the group of students that belong to this program actually remain close-knit. So please use each other for networking and stay connected. And please always feel that you can reach out to me as you go on your journey past graduation and into your careers. And for those of you who may be interested in the program, I'm happy to speak with you at any time. So tonight we're going to talk about fashion brand stories. And I'm going to really talk about a little bit about the book that I just wrote and also give you some practical applications on this idea of fashion branding. So I also want to I dedicated my book to my family. So I want to dedicate the talk this evening also to my mom, Margaret Miller, who inspired me. I'll give you a little snippet. You know how your parents always tell you to not pick your nose? Well, I didn't listen. And so when I was at the ripe old age of 4 years old, my mother and I were featured in an article in the front of the Wichita Eagle and Beacon newspaper. My mother was a single parent who was exercising her rights to vote. And let me tell you, as a single mom in the early 70s, that's quite an accomplishment. My mom and I shared a one-bedroom apartment and we slept in bunk beds. But my mom always told me, don't stop picking your nose. And guess what? My first foray into media is a picture of me picking my nose. So when your parents say don't pick your nose, they mean it. I also want to thank for his contributions to allowing me to do all this work, my husband Raymond, who is one of the best violinists you'll ever hear, and to our dog Ruby, who celebrated her 16th birthday this year. That picture's a year old. So for those of you that don't know me at all, I wanted to tell you a little bit about who I am. I actually have all 3 of my degrees in merchandising. I went to Indiana University for my undergrad and master's, and like all of my students, I would say all of you, I actually worked full-time while I got my master's degree. The difference was back in the day when I went to school, there was no online. So I actually had to go face-to-face. And it took me 15 years from the age of 25 to the age of 40 to get my master's and PhD. And so having a program like this that was online was a passion for me because I thought that education was lacking in the area of allowing those who are working in an environment and really need to keep their time tight to really allow them to work and get their degree. I had to use my days off as my class days, and I don't want anyone to ever have to do that. My work experience, for those that may not even know, I actually started working in retail in 1983 in high school, and the companies I have worked for are the Gap, County Seat, the Limited Corporation. I was a regional field merchandiser for Target Corporation. I had the wonderfully fashionable states of Oregon, Southern Washington, Idaho, Utah, and Montana. And I did that for about 5 years. And then I arrived at Drexel University in 2004, and I have been here ever since, climbing the ladder of academia. My teaching, I teach in merchandising and women's studies in the Honors College. I'm also, as many of you in here know, I'm the program director for our Masters in Retail and Merchandising program. So the story of this, and I think it's great because this is the part that's new for most of you, if not all of you in this room. So how did Brand Story come about? Brand Story came about because I had a visit from Joe Miranda, who was an acquisitions editor for Fairchild Books, visit Drexel. He wanted to see what Drexel was all about. I had met Joe at conferences, and he actually didn't know anyone at Drexel. So he thought because I had started teaching there that he would come for a visit. And he told me that they were really looking for someone to write a book about branding. And he proposed this book. And I said, that book is horrible. No one would read it. No one would want it. And so I told him what I would do. And I told him that in order to make merchandising students really happy, in order for merchandising students to really want to learn, the book has to have lots of pictures. It has to be visual, maybe shorter chapters, maybe case studies that are written a different way that really educate, but at the same time, it's like fun to read. And I told him, most importantly, it had to be brands that were relatable. And so throughout time and the evolution of this text, I have picked brands that I thought would be liked and that I liked, and those brands that inspire others. So I wrote this first book, just so all of you know, and it did not do anything. It sat for 2 years. And then in 2011, sales started to pick up. And so I was then approached in 2015 by Amanda Brescia, who basically said to me, she called me on the phone and she says, hey, I want to talk about brand story. And I said, I know, you're not going to do another edition. That's fine. I knew it was a once off and it was done. And she said, no, Joe. She goes, actually, she said, we actually did a survey of undergraduate students in merchandising. And we asked them what books they had to buy in undergrad. And we asked them then we asked them what books they actually read. And by the way, your book was #1. So they asked me to do another book in 2016. And that's when we really kind of mixed things up. We changed it and it became a different type of textbook. So in 2016, I did another edition. Fast forward to today. In 2022, a woman by the name of Georgia Kennedy at Bloomsbury International in the UK called me on the phone and she said to me, I want to know when the next edition of Brand Story is coming out. And I said, it's not. They're not doing another edition. They've contacted me and said it's not going to happen. And she basically said, no, I've got to have this book. Unbeknownst to me, and this is the moral of the story and where I'm going so everyone knows, Brand Story was not selling to merchandising students. Brand Story was being used in art classes, visual arts classes, to teach people who knew nothing about branding, primarily designers and artists, how to brand. And she said, it's one of my top books that people buy for those classes. She's like, so you have to do another one. And I said, sure, I'll do another one. Let's talk. So we talked and actually we decided, and this is the fun part, we decided to rebrand Brand Story. And so Brand Story became Fashion Brand Stories, and we actually updated a lot of the book. I thought it would be fun. If you want to know why I chose the cover that I did, I thought it would be fun. And for those who have read the book and have taken class with me, this photo is from a Calvin Klein billboard from 2009 that was in New York. It was noted as one of the most risque billboards ever. It has a great story. I love this picture of this woman on her cell phone just looking up. And the billboard was so scandalous that it was asked to be removed immediately. So it was not up for very long. And so that's why I thought it was a great cover for the book, because it's a great brand story. And just think, Calvin Klein sold a lot of jeans because of that. Bad publicity is good publicity. So, and the other thing that's really great about this book is I actually did that thing where you ask people for favors. I reached out into my network of individuals and I said, hey, I need experts in areas related to branding because I don't know everything and I really rely on you to tell me. And so I'm not the only expert in this book. I actually asked for help and I received help from many of my friends, many of my colleagues from all over the globe, all the way from the US to Hong Kong, and asked them if they wouldn't mind contributing. I actually interviewed Mike Edwards, who sponsored our speaker series. He's the gentleman on the second from the left. I asked Nancy Mayer, who is also one of our speakers for this series, and I actually asked Sean Williams, who's on the far right, to be part of my interviews as well. So I really relied on other people and their expertise on how to put this book together and make it a comprehensive reader. So let's talk about the theorist. So I'm telling you how to do great brand stories, but what most people forget is this idea that there are really those people that are scholarly, that are out there in the field, who actually are looking at us as consumers and saying, hey, this is a global issue. This is something that people need to understand and people need to talk about because it's really happening. So a lot of times we forget those wonderful people who do scholarly works and say, hey, this is a phenomenon and it's really important that people understand it, because that helps to build us and push us forward. So my favorite theorist in this book, one of them is Roland Barthes, who is the gentleman who's doing the thing that no one should be doing, smoking a cigarette. He was a French theorist who said that each product category has a language. He was the first one to talk about this notion that fashion in and of itself had its own language and means of communication. And then there's a gentleman by the name of Stuart Hall, who gave us this notion of encoding and decoding. And this notion of encoding and decoding is that companies encode their advertisements and their brands, and the consumer decodes. And the decoding is whatever you want to get out of it. But he said the most important thing about this decoding process is representation. How much have we heard that recently in the media? And since you know, in the recent times, in the horrible mishaps and the horrible things that had happened, and the awakening of everyone to understand that all consumers are important, especially those that have been traditionally marginalized. So Stuart Hall, who was a Jamaican theorist, who's in the upper left-hand corner, said representation is crucial in advertising. If a person does not see themselves, they may not relate to the product. And then we have a wonderful man by the name of Jean Baudrillard, who's in the lower right, who basically is the only one out of all these people. No, I'm fibbing right now. I actually met two of these folks who I actually got to meet. And Jean Baudrillard said that hyperreality is crucial in fashion and crucial in consumer advertising. And hyperreality is this notion of aspiration. We all want products because we think they'll change our lives forever. But after we really own them, we all thought the iWatch would change our lives forever. But does it really change your life after you've had it for a year? Maybe, maybe not. So really this notion of aspiration, and everyone wants to buy aspirational things to make their lives better. We have a wonderful woman by the name of Terry Agans, who is in the upper second from the right. She really introduces the whole world to the end of fashion as far as marketing taking over the industry forever. If you get a chance, I would tell every one of you on this Zoom, read the book, The End of Fashion by Terry Agans. It was done in 1999 and is still very relevant to today. And she really introduces this notion of lifestyle merchandising and brands creating this notion of lifestyle and merchandising. The last theorist I want to talk about is the other person I've gotten to meet in my lifetime is Marcia Morgado. She's in the far upper right. And she really, a lot of her research discusses this notion of postmodernism into hypermodernism. Marcia's really looked at research as what era are we in and where are we going? And how does fashion reflect this? And so she's been very inspirational to me and been a colleague of mine through the American Culture Association, where I met her, and I've known her for years. And I've been very honored to be a part of her life. So the stories. Storytelling is something we all understand. Did you know that in 1931, Coca-Cola gave us the image of Santa Claus that we have today? It was Coke, this lovely product, if you can see mine, that gave us that image. And it gave us the construction of who Santa was. And so for years, Coca-Cola built its reputation on the holiday season and Santa Claus. But what's even more important about this ad, and it's why I wanted to put it in the book, this is an ad from 1953. In the 1940s, after World War II, this notion of mass production and mass creation was very popular. But also the idea to get consumers to buy more and more products. You will note in this ad that the young boy in this ad is wearing pink pajamas. So it really is a clue into the world that pink and blue were really not mass consumed colors for boys, blue for boys, pink for girls, until after the 1950s. That's actually a product and a marketing gig. What a great brand story that all the retailers in the world, primarily in the States, I won't say in the world, in the United States, brainwashed us into thinking that blue was for boys and pink was for girls. That's another story and another branding ideology that helps us, that forms our opinions and helps us to think about how we buy. So why is storytelling so important for any brand? Well, storytelling is significant because we all know it. It reintroduces cultural characters. It may support representation. It helps the consumer relate. It gives the product personality. It moves the product forward, and it may give us some history while moving us into the future. The process of storytelling is that the storytelling process relies heavily on the company's capability to make an emotional connection through their brand and to build target markets. Company use the basic concepts of storytelling such as message, conflict, character, and plot, and it can be a minute to 20 seconds, and it's all in there. That really makes you start to think about a brand and whether or not you relate to that brand. So for a moment, I want all of you to think of a recent media ad you just saw, and how did the advertiser use this concept? But I want you to first and foremost know branding is not new. Everyone thinks that branding was like this huge phenomenon that popped up in the 90s. It's not new. It's been around forever. Branding was the famous designer Elsa Schiaparelli. The famous designer Elsa Schiaparelli branded the famous actress Mae West by using Mae West's torso to sell her perfume, Shocking de Schiaparelli. We also have the Maidenform Bra Company. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Maidenform Bra Company, but that bra company actually created an entire series of ads called the I Dreamed campaign, and that campaign ran for decades. And you can Google Maidenform I Dreamed campaign. That campaign was not only a feminist movement, it also was the first campaign to really introduce this notion of showing women in their underwear. Then we also have Johnny Weissmuller, who was the famous Olympic swimmer in the 1930s. And Johnny Weissmuller actually was an Olympic swimmer. He's our first Tarzan actor. But because of his fame in the swimwear world, in the swimming world as an Olympic swimmer, BVD, as you can see, the swimsuit he's wearing says BVD. The BVD company asked him to do a collaboration line of bathing suits with him. And so Johnny Weissmuller did an entire line of swimwear with the BVD company. Not only that, because of that collaboration, they started to open Johnny Weissmuller swim camps. Then we have one of my favorites, Madam C.J. Walker. Madam C.J. Walker was our first female Black, and I want to say millionaire. I don't know if she was a billionaire. And she actually started this whole line of hair care and beauty products for a whole market that was being ignored, Black women. The one thing I want to talk about with Madam C.J. Walker is this. It's very crucial. Most of the industry believes that it was Estee Lauder and the Estee Lauder Corporation that invented the idea of gift with purchase. It wasn't. It was Madam C.J. Walker who introduced this notion of buy and get for free. So it was really her that gave us this notion of gift with purchase in the beauty industry. So we're going to talk about various types of branding this evening, and I'm going to go really quick. And so these fly rather quickly through, and you're going to get to see them. And just so you guys know, if you're putting things in the chat, I can't check them right now, so you can just shout them out. But the types of branding discussed in the book and the types of branding we're going to look at tonight, and I'm going to give you some different examples, are iconic collaboration, product recognition, the evolution of a product line, new directions in design and luxury, and how to do private label, all through the use of story. So this is the recipe. The recipe is what is fashion branding. And fashion branding is really the cumulative image that surrounds a product and it gives it context. And it's really the notion of giving a product a person, place, or whatever. What it really does is it really personifies the brand. It makes the brand almost appear like it's lifelike. So if you think about Apple and iPhones, they almost make it feel like the iPhone itself has a personality, but it doesn't. It's the person who's using the iPhone. But in reverse, Apple makes you think that that product in and of itself has a personality. And then this notion of storytelling theories. I look at this notion of storytelling, and that really gives us the idea of my concept of brand story. And that's kind of what I'm known for in my discipline. So let's look at a couple of examples. Well, I'm going to show you a first example that we'll do a little discussion on, and then we'll move into a couple others. So here we go. So let's look at our first example. Who is in this ad? Who would like to answer that question? Anyone share? Caitlin, go for it. You don't have to raise your hand.
Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg.
Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg, right? And we would think that Martha Stewart, what an odd combination. And this was for their potluck show that they had on VH1. And we would think, what an odd combination, right? And they're also contextualized in something else. What were they mimicking? What else were they doing?
The Titanic.
The Titanic, right? And so that's famous scene from the Titanic, I'm flying, I feel like I'm flying, right? But Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg represent what we call cultural icons. The best brands will relate to others using familiar icons of popular culture. They will reach many through a strategy that allows for more than one interpretation. Storytelling is the key. So anyone that doesn't know who Martha Stewart is, but knows who Snoop Dogg is, will be like, what is Snoop Dogg doing with that lady, that white lady? And then anybody that doesn't know who Snoop Dogg is, but knows who Martha Stewart is, it's going to be, what is she doing with that guy? And then if they don't know who anybody is, they may get the scene. They may go, why are those two people redoing the Titanic? What's this all about? And they go and they look and see. And in reality, though, if we think about it, Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg have a lot in common. They both have been to prison. They both have been incarcerated. They both love the doobie weed. They're both pot people, right? They both are major celebrities and they like to cook. So they have great markets. And this ad is a great example of what storytelling is all about. Storytelling is interactive. Storytelling uses words or images. Storytelling uses actions such as vocalization, physical movement, and or gesture. Storytelling uses characters, plots, and builds on cultural understandings. So in this short snippet, you see Martha teaching Snoop how to cook. Like she's giving him this notion of an understanding of this is how you cook. She's showing, she's mentoring, she's teaching. Storytelling encourages your imagination because they're in this setting, this kitchen that doesn't exist. It's almost like a boat, but it really isn't really a boat with the windows flying open. And storytelling happens through various forms of media. What's one element of this ad that we have not discussed? It's the thing that's always forgotten. And I will tell you, because we're on a time schedule. It is this. Go ahead, Diana. What were you gonna say?
It's the song in the background.
You got it. It is Celine Dion, who is the fourth component of this ad. If we didn't know who any of those people are, what they were doing, but we heard our girl Celine Dion, we would be like, what is going on with this? Why is it so important? The music is crucial. That's our example and the components of branding. Let's look at our first actual brand.
That's perfect.
The gray sky.
That's cool. What's bothering you?
So this is a social media campaign that Gap did in I think it's 2018, 2019. It's all blurring together. And it was not on television. It was completely social media. And it is the storytelling of the famous Gap zip sweatshirt. When most people think of Gap, they think of jeans. But did you know it was Gap in the lovely year of 1989 that came out with this zip hoodie sweatshirt? I'm old enough to remember because I was there. The Gap is known for being one of the first retailers to really revolutionize the sweats industry. Back in the day, you would go into a Gap and the whole back wall of the store was nothing but sweats. Total large sweat walls. I remember folding them. We had guidelines on how to fold them. The other thing that Gap did was they created the first zip sweatshirt that split the logo in the center and literally did it seamlessly. The other thing that was great is that this sweatshirt was so popular, it sold out in seconds in the first go around. It's still made today, but the other thing that Gap did is because they were so well known for this sweatshirt, because designers would send their shoppers in to buy this Gap sweatshirt so that they could make their designer logo split in two. They wanted to know where it was manufactured, how they could do the same thing. That in 2018, the Gap sponsored a designer sweatshirt competition. So this is a great example of how something that you really didn't think a retailer was about. When I say Gap to most people, they think jeans, when in reality, the Gap is really known for this hooded zip sweatshirt. That's another thing that they're known for. And the other thing is that the upper echelon of design, the couturiers, the high-end designers actually look at a mass manufactured retailer on how they did something right and how they can reinvent it and sell it at higher prices. But so anyway, so in 2018, the Gap had this competition across the globe, and they designed these sweatshirts and then they sold them in their stores to pay homage to all the designers that had collaborated with them, and also those that had kind of knocked off their sweatshirt.
That's perfect.
The gray sky.
That's cool. What's bothering you?
What a great ad to walk you through the life of a hoodie and then show again how that hoodie is rebought again as an adult because it's timeless, iconic, and forever. Our next brand is we're going to look at the evolution of a product line. When I say Coach, do you guys think of this? Now, I actually don't laugh. I have this bag. I got this bag in 1989. I have this exact bag in my closet, and I sometimes hold it up when I give talks. But when I say Coach today, what do you think? Anyone? Someone tell me, what do you think?
I think purses with the Coach logo all over it.
You think
That's
Coach?
what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think of the Tabby.
You
right
think
now.
of the Tabby, their new bag, right?
Yeah.
Do you think of this?
I found out he was a lot like me. He was a lot like a lot of the people I grew up with in New York City. We didn't come from money. All we had was raw talent.
You know, you look at his pieces and you see New York during the 80s. You see that urban, youthful, artistic spirit.
The power that you have as a young person to get up, get out and do something.
I always loved that about his art. He knew what he wanted, and he worked really hard to get it.
He catapulted graffiti into fine art.
In a time when there was a level of whiteness and refinement, he was an individual who went against all of the constraints of what art was supposed to be.
It was telling the truth.
It has a childishness to it, a childish, like, wonder to it.
The least famous things.
The imperfections of humanity.
He took that responsibility of being a reflection of the times. His truth back then is our reality today.
So Coach reinventing itself with Jean-Michel Basquiat in order to become more relative to the art world, to a higher level, but at the same time to reach, whoops, hold on. Sorry about that, I let somebody in. To reach a urban market, to reimagine who they are and to reach an urban market. And they continue to do this. And they do it through, I think it was Virginia that said the Tabby. I think it was Bria that said logo. So they continue to reinvent themselves in different ways in order to reach a diverse market. This is something that you are going to continue to see through brand story. And by collabing with an artist, you actually start to become part of that art world, and you start to also become part of that artist's story. And so people relate to you. Another artist that Coach continually uses is Keith Haring. So I think it's important that you start to see that when you have two icons and they meet together and collab, that they can capture, again, multiple markets. This is not so different than our lovely Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg combo. But what do these brands have that really has allowed them to do this? Time. So these are brands that have been around for some time, and they're big brands, okay? So I'm gonna switch it a little bit. I'm gonna switch it up a little bit to a smaller brand that started not so long ago, and how they've done things and how they've actually used a different approach. So this is brand story 3, new directions in luxury and private label.
The question isn't why you built a watch factory in Detroit, it's why you built one anywhere else. This is the city that made this country, with its steel, with its skill, with its labor. Reestablishing trades that haven't been seen in this country in a generation or more. It's a tall order to return to form, but it's what hundreds of Shinola employees work towards every day here in Detroit, where we believe in the beauty of industry, the glory of manufacturing. Shinola.
So this is the brand Shinola, whose motto is where America is made. It started out with Made in America, but they were soon told that they could not say that anymore because their parts of their watches are actually from Switzerland, but the watches are completely put together in the city of Detroit. This is a great story of a company that is trying to reinvent a city that saw demise because of the automotive industry. And so Shinola came into Detroit, chose Detroit as its home base, and moved forward to make Detroit a watch manufacturing mecca. So the story that's great about Shinola is that Shinola has created this ideology of them saving Detroit. And they have done a great job with telling the story over and over again. But Shinola just doesn't make watches.
I moved to Detroit about 2 years ago to work in film. The scene is growing. Every project is something new and something different. There's never a dull moment. I mean, everyone is on the move. You have to keep up if you want to leave a mark. It's a tight-knit community here where everyone has your back.
Shinola has diversified from their watch assortment into bags. They sell journals, they sell jewelry, they sell many products all with the Shinola private label. They've even actually done a few collaborations and watches that celebrate icons of culture. So one of the things that people have knocked Shinola for is this notion that the watches are really expensive. They range anywhere between you can get the Detrola for about 400, like upper 390s, 400, all the way up to, they have watches all the way up to $2,500. They also, their goods, they are a new luxury. They're the idea of buy less, but buy better quality. That's really what they're all about. And that's, you can look at that by looking at their website, where their product line doesn't change so frequently. It's pretty much the same product line season after season with just a few tweaks here and there. But one of the things that I think is really important about Shinola that I didn't include in my book, but that I actually want to include later, is this notion of what they pay their employees. The employees at Shinola overall are very happy because their salaries are above averages. So you have watch assemblers, the people that work in the watch factories in Detroit, making $40,000 up to like usually about $40,000 a year, to quality control inspectors making $55,000, all the way up to, you can have sales coordinators at retail making $104,000. You have social media managers making $135,000, and the list goes on and on. The salaries at the brand are somewhat higher than the average retail salaries that you would see out there for a small retail company that is still quite small. They don't have a lot of stores. In fact, they actually shut down a few stores a little while after COVID. They decided to consolidate a few of their stores. I think now they only have 14 stores in the United States. But so they're a good mid-sized small company, but they believe in their employees.
The people at this company at Shinola Detroit are the most dedicated I've ever worked with, and the most sincerely caring of the finished product that they're offering. It's not just a job.
It's a great feeling. I mean, the city of Detroit is home of makers.
Shinola is full of amazing people, and yes, it is the people that make it special. Most of us are from Detroit, and it's like a family here.
They're like my best friends and co-workers together, all wrapped up in one.
People who work here enjoy coming to work every day and care enough about the product to be committed to it like no place I've ever been.
A lot of people coming together to create this one significant piece of material that someone is going to cherish for a long time. So I think with that being said, you're carrying around a piece of us.
The one thing I admire about Shinola, from all the employees that I've talked to, even those who used to work for the company that I've spoken with, they've all enjoyed the experience. They've liked the company. They think the products are great. What are the cons of this whole discussion about a new company coming in with a new vision? The biggest criticism that people have given them, it's that it's bougie crap, that it's basically just a product that's being marked up in order to sell something that's perceivably a luxury. But again, I argue that retail is really about making a profit. But the one thing that I think is important about Shinola is the pay. The pay is great for the employees. The other thing that Shinola has been accused of is exploitation, the exploitation of the city of Detroit. But I would argue that any commerce that goes into a city that's in disrepair and that city needs help is good for the city. Shinola has not only opened stores and a factory in the city, they've also opened a hotel and a mini shopping mall. So, and the mini shopping mall features local and US companies. So I think that that's what's great about this company. They have firmly said now that their watches are assembled in the United States and they're built of Swiss parts. But you know, the employees are usually featured in their ads, and they're paid to be in their ads because I asked that question. They support other small businesses. They have a fan base, which I think is crucial for any small business. Whether or not what the critical mind says about the brand, if the brand has a fan base, that's crucial. And that fan base will become loyal customers, and they have a lot of loyal customers. Again, employee endorsements, they support the local economy. A lot of times you'll see Shinola products collaborating with other manufacturers. They collaborate with other small businesses in the Michigan area who do US made products, such as their journals. They'll collate with the manufacturer of their journals, who's a local vendor, and they help that vendor along with the company. And they've received a lot of political support from 2 of our former presidents. And I will say nothing, but they were 2 of my favorite presidents, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. So I'm fine with that as well. But that's enough about politics. But that's all I had. Any questions about fashion brand storytelling? None?
I would say, what interested you in going in this direction instead of, I guess, going straight into retail and merchandising on the factory scale? Because I know you did work in the industry, but what led you here?
What led me into academia? Great.
Yeah, and also like being an author.
Yeah. First of all, I will tell all of you that my PhD advisor would tell you right now that I was probably the last person in the entire world that she would ever think would write a book. And she also would probably tell you, I also am a journal editor, and she would tell you I was the last person in the world she ever thought would do a journal article, edit a journal. What really drove me to do this is this notion that I actually, when I was in industry, and I think I've told some of my students about, some of you guys about this, I actually, when I was in industry, do you know what my favorite part of industry was? It was the people. I realized I liked retail and merchandising because of the people I worked with. It was the first place that I actually thought about it. And I realized that our industry was a bunch of outcast people, people that didn't feel like they had a home, that wanted to do creative things, but didn't have a home. And it was the first place I really felt accepted as Joe, who I am. And so that really became important to me. I always thought that product was number one with me. I always thought, oh, I have to work, for a company that does stuff I like. And so I worked for Gap for about 12 years of my life. And I realized that really why I was there wasn't for the sweaters. It was for the people that I was working with. And so then when I left industry and I started teaching, I really realized that it was working with you guys, with students, that gave me joy. It's people. It's people give me joy, not stuff. And so then I went back into industry in branding and marketing, and then into merchandising for Target. And again, that same theme came back. It was, I like to train people. I like to work with people. I like people. And so I just realized that was where my journey was. And so the one way I was able to work with people, all different walks of life, was education. So I went to education. I rolled the dice and got a job at Drexel. I didn't know anything about Drexel when I came here. And then what made me want to be an author? I will tell you, it was that conversation with Joe Miranda in 2007, when he said, oh, we should write this textbook about branding and it should be like this. And I grew up with Fairchild textbooks. So the textbooks that you guys use, I had as a student. And half the time I always said getting a textbook out was the best way to take a nap. And I'm like, if that's what they're gonna write, no one's gonna read that. So I wanted to create something that was a little spicy, almost like reading People magazine, but at the same time, it was educating you in a case study format. So that's why I did what I did. And that's kind of how I came up with it. But I will tell you this, Ollie, because it's a great question. Popular culture is the main means of how I do all my research. So I actually was a good fit for Drexel University because Drexel takes this ideology of practice-based education. And popular culture, if you're somebody that looks at popular culture as your means of understanding, that's practical and that's everyday, and that's what people are looking at. So I don't look at I do not look at high culture as a means of understanding. I look at everyday culture. So what I mean by that is I'm not a person that gravitates towards, I'm not the person that gravitates towards, high art. I'm the person that gravitates towards comic books because I think that they've given us a better understanding of who we are. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes, Jenny, go for it.
Hi, I just have a question. Is there any campaign or collaboration that has stuck out to you recently as really like missing the mark on storytelling?
That's a good one. Missing the mark. I will say this. I will give you an example of a brand that I thought that was somewhat horrific, that everyone for some reason wanted to be a part of. That brand is Abercrombie and Fitch. They did nothing but push whiteness, white muscles, and skinny girls into the public eye. And everyone, I called it playing upon your insecurities. And they actually had a reverse effect on a lot of folks that wanted to be a part of that club. And that's what made them so popular. And I can shamelessly say they were one of the brands I supported at Limited. And I thought it was interesting to me how at the time I was at Limited, Structure was still alive, which was the men's division of the Limited at the time, and Structure became Express for men. But Structure was failing, and Structure was all inclusive. Structure was about the everyday guy, what he wore to the office, how he, exercised. Whereas Abercrombie and Fitch was about the hyper masculine, skinny, muscular, white guy and his extra thin girlfriend. And everyone chased that brand, but nobody came to Express and Structure. So to me, it was a joke because I'm like, it tells me what it's aspiration at its worst. So I think that's, when you see aspiration at its worst, that's problematic. I also think that one of the things that bothers me in brand advertising today is this notion of we have a lot of drugs put in our faces today on television. I think every person in the world thinks there might be something wrong with them because we see so many prescriptions out there in the market. And I don't think anyone's listening to all the warnings that the person's reading at a hyper fast pace that tells you what the drug might do to you, like cause this. And so I think that that's also not missing the mark. They're obviously doing a good job, but it's problematic for me because we've had a lot of products in history advertised to us as one thing and they were not. And I'm going to give you all, and you're going to Google it when you get off of here, but it's the truth. I always tell my students, and they're aghast, and most of them are female, Lysol, when it came out, was advertised as a feminine hygiene product. Lysol spray, the disinfectant spray, Lysol. And it was marketed as a feminine hygiene product. And women used it. And it was not good for you. So sometimes we're marketing things that we really shouldn't be marketing. And that's where it misses the mark. That's where it misses the mark. And the other thing, we get people out, cigarette companies, same thing, but it's a thing of the times. It's a thing of the times. I didn't mean to talk that long, Jenny, but I just wanted
No,
to.
thank you. So there's a line between being, too aspirational that you're excluding but yet you also want to be relatable at the same time.
Yeah, like today we would tell you to drink this in a smart method. Water's better for you than this. But then what does Coca-Cola do? Because they're smart, they go into water. So they sell water now too. Yeah, for the same amount as the soda. Yeah. And I'm never here to argue whether or not something's right or wrong, but I do try to present both sides of the coin. Like, for example, with Shinola, I do believe that they're playing on this downtrodden city and how they're like this savior. But at the same time, I say business is business, and it's better to have a job than not have a job. So it's kind of one of those give and takes, and the pay is, and they pay people okay, which I think is a good thing. So they're just not, it's not the company where they're trying to save Detroit and then they're paying everyone $8 an hour. They actually pay them better than that, which I think is great. Any other questions? And Jenny, you and I still have to meet.
Yes.
We will. Anything else? Well, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it so much.